Luca Santoro had been coming to the Bellamy restaurant 3 times a week for 3 months, always requesting table 8, always leaving tips that made the other waitresses jealous. But watching the restaurant owner grab Aria Johnson by the arm and drag her toward the kitchen made something primal roar to life in his chest. Richard Brennan had just made the worst mistake of his life, because Luca had already decided that blonde waitress with the short hair and haunted eyes belonged to him, and no one touched what was his. Where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. And if you want exclusive access to bonus content and early releases, click that join button to become a member. Aria Johnson had been in Las Vegas for 6 months, and she still couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. At 27, she'd learned to trust her instincts, and right now, those instincts were screaming that the man at table 8 was dangerous. Not dangerous in the way her ex-husband Derek had been dangerous, with his unpredictable rages and brutal fists. This was different. Controlled. Deliberate. The kind of danger that came wrapped in expensive clothes and devastatingly handsome features. Luca Santoro. She'd learned his name after the 3rd time he'd requested her section. 41 years old according to the reservation system, though he didn't look it. He had the kind of presence that made people move aside when he entered a room, an energy that was both magnetic and terrifying. Tonight he wore what he always wore, black pants, and a black button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with ink she'd never gotten close enough to examine properly. His dark brown hair was longer than was fashionable, falling past his collar in waves that looked perpetually tousled, like he'd been running his hands through it, or just rolled out of bed. He had a shadow of stubble along his strong jaw that never quite became a beard, and dark eyes that tracked her every movement with an intensity that made her hands shake. He wasn't traditionally handsome in the polished way of the businessmen who frequented the Bellamy. There was something rougher about him, something unrefined beneath the expensive watch and the confident posture. He smiled easily, laughed at her nervous jokes, but his eyes stayed cold and calculating even when his mouth curved with amusement. She'd served enough dangerous men in her 6 months as a waitress to recognize the type. Luca Santoro was someone important, someone powerful, and definitely someone involved in things that didn't bear close examination. Which was why Aria had spent 3 months trying to figure out if he was connected to Derek. If her ex-husband had somehow tracked her from Cedar Falls, Iowa to Las Vegas, and sent this beautiful, terrifying man to watch her, to report back on her location, to drag her home. The rational part of her brain knew it was paranoid. Derek was a small-town cop with delusions of grandeur, not someone with the resources to hire expensive muscle in another state. But the scared part of her, the part that still woke up from nightmares of his hands around her throat, couldn't let it go. So she smiled when Luca ordered his usual Macallan neat, tried not to flinch when his fingers brushed hers taking the glass, and counted down the minutes until he left each night. What she didn't understand was why, despite her fear, she felt something else when he looked at her. Something warm and electric that coiled in her stomach and made her hyper-aware of her body. It was unwanted and inappropriate and absolutely terrifying, but it was there. Had been there since the first night he'd walked in, and their eyes had met across the dining room. Aria had changed everything about herself when she fled Iowa. Her hair had been long and chestnut brown, falling to the middle of her back in the waves Derek had loved. She'd cut it all off in a gas station bathroom in Nebraska, hacking away with cheap scissors until it barely brushed her shoulders. Then she'd gone to a salon in Vegas and had them bleach it platinum blonde and style it into a sharp Chanel cut that grazed her jawline. She'd thrown away her modest dresses and started wearing jeans and simple shirts. She'd changed her email, her phone number, her entire identity. The woman Derek Johnson had terrorized for 5 years no longer existed. Except she did. She existed in the way Aria still flinched when men moved too quickly, in the way she triple-checked her apartment locks every night, in the way she kept her emergency bag packed and ready by the door, just in case she needed to run again. She existed in the paranoia that made Aria suspicious of every regular customer, every man who looked at her twice, every generous tip that seemed too good to be true, like the tips Luca Santoro left. $300, $500. Once, $750 on a bill that had been less than $200. It was insane. It was suspicious, and it was the only reason she could afford her studio apartment in a building with actual security. Tonight was Friday, which meant the restaurant was packed with tourists and high rollers from the casino next door. The Bellamy was inside the Oasis Hotel and Casino, an upscale establishment that attracted the kind of clientele who thought nothing of spending thousands on dinner. Arya had gotten the job because she'd been desperate and willing to work the late shift that no one else wanted. She'd learned quickly that late-night service meant bigger tips and fewer questions about her lack of references from previous employers. She was refilling water glasses when she saw Luca walk in at his usual time, 10 p.m. He moved with a casual confidence that parted the crowd, 2 men in suits flanking him like shadows. Bodyguards, though they tried to be subtle about it. They took a table near the entrance while Luca headed straight for table 8, the corner booth with sight lines to every entrance and exit. A tactician's seat, a dangerous man's seat. His dark eyes found her immediately, and something flickered across his face. Satisfaction, maybe, or possession. It made her stomach flip. "Ms. Johnson," the hostess said, appearing at her elbow. "Table 8 is requesting you specifically." Of course he was. He always did. Arya smoothed down her black pants and white shirt, checked that her apron was straight, and forced herself to walk across the dining room with confidence she didn't feel. "Mr. Santoro," she said, pulling out her notepad. "Welcome back. The usual. Arya." He always used her first name, his slight Italian accent making it sound like a caress. "You know me so well. Yes, Macallan 18. Neat. And whatever Giuseppe recommends for dinner tonight. I trust his judgment." "Of course." She scribbled the note even though she didn't need to. She knew his order by heart. "I'll get that started for you." "You look tired," Luca said, and there was something in his voice that made her look up. Concern? Surely not. Long shift? "Every shift is long, Mr. Santoro," Arya said carefully. "But I'm fine. Thank you for asking." "Luca," he corrected, like he did every time. "After 3 months, I think we can dispense with formalities." "That wouldn't be appropriate," Arya said. "You're a customer." "I'm a man who admires a woman who works as hard as you do," Luca said, his dark eyes holding hers. "Who never asks for help, even when she clearly needs it. Who carries trays heavy enough to make her arms shake but refuses to make 2 trips because that would mean admitting weakness. I see you, Arya. More than you think I do." Her breath caught. That was too specific. Too observant. "I should get your drink. One more thing." Luca's hand moved to his jacket pocket, and Arya's body tensed instinctively before he pulled out a simple business card. "My private number. In case you ever need anything. Anything at all." "I won't need anything," Arya said. But she took the card anyway because refusing felt more dangerous than accepting. "But thank you." She fled to the bar, her heart racing. He'd noticed. Noticed that she refused help, that she pushed herself too hard, that she was barely holding it together most nights. What else had he noticed? Did he know she was running from something? Someone? The bartender, James, raised an eyebrow as he poured the Macallan. "Santoro making you nervous again?" "He's just a customer," Arya said. "He's not just anything," James said quietly. "You know who he is, right? What he is?" "I don't want to know," Arya said firmly. "I take his order. He leaves a good tip. That's all I need to know." "Suit yourself," James said. "But word of advice? Don't get on his bad side. And definitely don't get on his good side either. Men like that, they're dangerous both ways." Arya delivered the drink, took Luca's dinner order, and tried to focus on her other tables. But she felt his eyes on her all night, tracking her movements, watching her with that unnerving intensity. When she brought his entree, he asked about her life in Vegas, how she was settling in, if she'd made friends. She deflected with practiced ease, keeping everything surface level and professional. She was clearing his dessert plates when Richard Brennan appeared. The restaurant owner was in his early 50s, with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. He'd been pressuring Arya for weeks about something she'd refused to even consider, and from the look on his face tonight, his patience had run out. "Arya," Richard said, his hand suddenly on her arm. "A word. Now." "I'm working," Arya said, trying to pull away subtly. "Can it wait until—" "No, it can't wait." His fingers tightened, not quite painful but definitely not gentle. "We need to discuss your future here. Kitchen. Now." Arya's eyes darted to Luca, who had gone completely still. His expression was calm, but something in his posture had changed, coiled tight like a snake about to strike. Their eyes met for a brief second before Richard dragged her toward the kitchen entrance. Away from the dining room, away from witnesses, Richard's pleasant mask dropped completely. He shoved her against the wall near the walk-in refrigerator, one hand planted beside her head. "I've been very patient with you," he said coldly. "Very generous, giving you good shifts, looking the other way about your lack of proper documentation. But my patience has limits, Arya." "I don't know what you're talking about," Arya said, even though she did. She absolutely did. "The private events," Richard said. "I have a very important client who specifically requested a girl like you. Blonde, young, pretty. The event is tomorrow night, penthouse suite. You'll serve drinks, be entertaining, and make him very happy. $7,500 for one evening's work. More money than you make in 3 months." "I already told you I don't do those kinds of events," Arya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm a waitress. I serve food. That's all." "You're whatever I say you are," Richard hissed. "Do you think I don't know you're running from something? That you're here illegally or at least questionably? One call to immigration, one call to the police, and your whole new life disappears. So you're going to smile, nod, and show up tomorrow night. Understood?" "No," Arya said, finding strength she didn't know she had. "I'm not a prostitute. I won't—" Richard's hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to leave marks. "You don't get to say no to me. That generous tipper of yours, Santoro, you think he gives you that money out of kindness? He paid for you already. Tomorrow night he's just collecting on his investment. All you have to do is tire, as mouse. Della." The voice was quiet, deadly, and came from directly behind Richard. "Take your hands off her." Richard spun, releasing Arya so fast she stumbled. Luca Santoro stood in the doorway, backlit by the kitchen lights, and he looked like death incarnate. His casual demeanor had vanished, replaced by something cold and ancient, and absolutely terrifying. The 2 men who'd been sitting near the entrance flanked him, their jackets open just enough to suggest they were armed. "Mr. Santoro," Richard said, his voice climbing an octave. "This is just an internal employee matter." "You put your hands on her," Luca said, each word precise and sharp as a blade. "You propositioned her. You implied that I had paid for sexual services, which means you're either profoundly stupid or you have a death wish. I'm trying to decide which." "It was a misunderstanding," Richard said quickly. "I wasn't suggesting that you—" "Don't." Luca stepped forward, and Richard actually backed up. "Don't insult my intelligence. How long have you been running prostitutes out of my hotel?" The blood drained from Richard's face. Your hotel." "The Oasis belongs to my family," Luca said conversationally. "Has for 15 years. Did you really think I ate here 3 times a week because I like the pasta?" He turned to Arya, his expression softening fractionally. "Are you hurt?" Arya shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Good." Luca returned his attention to Richard. "You have 10 seconds to tell me everything. How long you've been operating, how many girls, who your clients are. 10 seconds, Richard, or I let Marco and Tony get creative." 2 years, Richard said in a rush. "Maybe 20 girls, all voluntary, I swear. High-end clients only. I have a list, names, I can— Give the list to Marco, Luca said. And then you're going to walk out of this hotel, get in your car, and drive until you hit the state line. If I ever see you in Nevada again, if I even hear your name, you won't make it home. Are we clear? But my business, is now mine, Luca finished. Consider it payment for putting your hands on something that doesn't belong to you. Now get out before I change my mind about letting you leave at all. Richard fled. Actually ran, pushing past Marco and Tony in his desperation to escape. Luca watched him go with cold satisfaction before turning back to Arya. Did he hurt you? Luca asked, his voice gentler now but no less intense. Show me your arm. Arya held out her arm numbly. Finger-shaped bruises were already forming where Richard had grabbed her. Luca's jaw clenched, a muscle jumping in his cheek. Marco, he said quietly. Scratch what I said earlier. Find Richard Brennan. Make sure he understands that touching her has consequences. No, Arya said quickly. Don't. He's gone. It's over. It's not over until I say it's over, Luca said. But if it makes you feel better, Marco will be diplomatic. Richard will live. He just won't be comfortable for a while. He studied her face. Come with me. We need to talk. I'm working, Arya protested weakly. The restaurant is closed, Luca said. As of right now, staff will be paid for the full shift, but everyone goes home. Except you. You come with me. It should have terrified her, should have sent her running. But instead, Arya found herself nodding, following Luca through the restaurant as he gave quiet orders to his men. Watching as the dining room emptied, confused customers being offered complimentary meals, and apologetic managers explaining an unexpected closure. Within 15 minutes, the Bellamy was empty, except for Arya, Luca, and the 2 guards. Luca led her through a door she'd never noticed before, down a hallway, and into an elevator that required a keycard. They rode in silence to the top floor, emerging into a penthouse office that overlooked the Vegas Strip. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the glittering lights, while the interior was all dark wood and leather furniture. Sit, Luca said, gesturing to a couch. Drink this. He pressed a glass of whiskey into her hands. Arya sat, drank. The whiskey burned going down, but it steadied her shaking hands. Luca pulled up a chair across from her, close enough that their knees almost touched. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need honest answers. Can you do that? Why? Arya asked. Why do you care? You're a customer. I'm a waitress. This isn't your problem. You became my problem 3 months ago, Luca said simply. The first night you walked onto the floor and tried so hard to look confident even though your hands were shaking. The first time you refused to make 2 trips even though that tray was clearly too heavy. The first time you smiled at me like I was just a normal man and not— He stopped himself. You became my problem, Arya, so answer my questions. Are you the reason Richard thought you'd paid for me? Arya asked instead. The tips. He said you'd already paid for me. My tips had nothing to do with buying you, Luca said, and there was anger in his voice now. I tip well because you work hard, because you need the money, because every time you looked at that tip and your eyes got wide with relief, it made my entire night better. That's all. Richard is a predator who saw generous tips and drew disgusting conclusions. You own this hotel, Arya said. Richard said, My family owns it, Luca confirmed, along with 3 others on the strip. I didn't tell you because it wasn't relevant. I came to the Bellamy because the food is good, and the corner table has good sight lines. I kept coming back because of you. Why? The question burst out of her. Why me? I'm nobody. I'm just— You're not nobody, Luca interrupted firmly. You're a woman who works 3 doubles a week and never complains, who refuses help even when she's clearly struggling, who has shadows in her eyes that tell me she's running from something, who changed everything about herself, from her hair to her name, to the way she carries herself, because she's trying to become someone new. Don't insult my intelligence by pretending you're nothing, Arya. I see you. I've always seen you. Tears burned behind Arya's eyes. You can't know that. You can't know about... About what? Luca leaned forward. About who you're running from. About why a beautiful woman with your education works a job that doesn't require background checks. About why you jump every time a man moves too quickly. His voice gentled. Tell me, Arya. Tell me what you're afraid of. And somehow, impossibly, she did. The words poured out of her like a dam breaking. About Derek Johnson, the police officer she'd married at 22. About how charming he'd been at first, how he'd isolated her from friends and family, how the first time he'd hit her, she'd actually apologized for making him angry. About 5 years of escalating abuse, of broken ribs and black eyes explained away as accidents, of living in constant fear. About the night 6 months ago when Derek had wrapped his hands around her throat, and she genuinely thought she was going to die. About how she'd waited until he'd passed out drunk, packed a bag, and run. About cutting her hair in that gas station bathroom and driving until she hit Vegas. About the constant paranoia that he was still looking for her, that he'd find her, that he'd make good on his promise to kill her if she ever left. Luca listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with every sentence. When she finally fell silent, he stood and paced to the window, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Derek Johnson, he said quietly. Cedar Falls, Iowa. Police officer. 33 years old. Arya's blood went cold. How do you... I had you investigated 2 months ago, Luca said, turning to face her. Not because I wanted to hurt you, because I wanted to know who you were. Who had put those shadows in your eyes? Whether you were safe. He crossed back to her, kneeling so they were eye level. I know about Derek. I know he's been looking for you, that he hired a private investigator last month who got as far as Denver before losing your trail. I know he's obsessed and dangerous, and that you're right to be afraid of him. You investigated me, Arya said numbly. You've known this whole time. I've known you were running, Luca confirmed. I didn't know the details until tonight. I didn't know he'd tried to kill you. If I had... His jaw clenched. If I had, Derek Johnson would already be dead. Arya should be horrified. Should be running from this man who casually talked about murder, who'd had her investigated, who owned hotels and had guards with guns. Instead, she felt something crack open in her chest. Relief. Bone-deep, overwhelming relief that someone finally knew. That she wasn't carrying this alone anymore. What do you want from me? Arya whispered. Why are you doing this? Because you're mine, Luca said simply. You've been mine since the first moment I saw you. I just had to wait for you to realize it too. He stood, pulling her up with him. You're not going back to your apartment tonight. It's not secure enough and you're clearly shaken up. There's a suite on this floor. Top-level security, completely safe. You'll stay there. I can't just... You can, Luca said. And you will. Tomorrow we'll discuss long-term arrangements, but tonight you need rest, and I need to make some calls about Richard Brennan's operation. His expression went cold. 20 girls, for 2 years, in my hotel. That's unacceptable. Arya should argue, should insist on going home. But the thought of her empty studio apartment, of lying awake all night jumping at every sound, was suddenly unbearable. Okay, she said quietly. Just for tonight. Just for tonight, Luca agreed, though something in his eyes suggested he was thinking much longer than that. He led her to a suite at the end of the hall, using another keycard to open the door. The space was enormous, all modern luxury and stunning views. A bedroom bigger than her entire apartment. A bathroom with a soaking tub. A living area with a full bar. There are clothes in the closet that should fit you, Luca said. Various sizes. Help yourself to whatever you need. Mini bar is fully stocked. If you need anything at all, call the front desk and ask for me directly. Luca, Arya said as he turned to leave. Thank you. For tonight. For stopping Richard, for everything, she wanted to say. For seeing me when I was trying so hard to be invisible. Get some rest, Arya, Luca said softly. We'll talk more tomorrow. But he didn't make it to the door. Arya crossed the space between them and kissed him. It was impulsive, and probably stupid, and definitely not something she'd planned. But she needed it. Needed to feel something other than fear. Needed to connect with this dangerous man who'd somehow made her feel safer than she had in years. Luca froze for half a second, then made a low sound in his throat and kissed her back. It was intense and consuming, his hands coming up to frame her face with surprising gentleness. He kissed like he did everything else, with focus and control, but there was heat beneath it, want barely leashed. When they finally broke apart, Arya's lips felt swollen and her heart was racing. Christo, Luca muttered. You're going to be the death of me, you know that. Was that wrong? Arya asked. I'm sorry, Don't apologize for that, Luca said firmly. Never apologize for that. But you've had a traumatic night, and I won't take advantage. So I'm going to leave now before I do something we'll both regret. Sleep, Arya. Tomorrow is a new day. He left before she could respond, and Arya stood in the middle of the enormous suite trying to process everything that had happened. Richard's assault, Luca's rescue, the revelation that he owned the hotel, that he'd had her investigated, that he'd known about Derek this whole time. The kiss. She touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his mouth against hers. This was insane. She was falling for a criminal, because there was no doubt that's what Luca Santoro was. Men who owned hotels and had armed guards and could shut down restaurants with a word weren't on the right side of the law. But he'd saved her tonight, had protected her when no one else would, had seen all of her, the real her, and hadn't looked away. Arya showered and found clothes in the closet as promised, expensive pajamas in multiple sizes. She chose a set that fit and climbed into a bed so comfortable she almost cried. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about Luca's words. You're mine. You've been mine since the first moment I saw you. It should terrify her. Instead, it felt like coming home. Arya woke late the next morning, disoriented by the unfamiliar room before memory crashed back. She found her phone on the nightstand, plugged in, and charging, though she didn't remember doing that. There were 3 missed calls from other waitresses at the Bellamy, asking what had happened last night. A text from an unknown number. Sleep well. Come to the office when you're ready. We need to talk. L. She showered, dressed in clothes from the closet that fit perfectly, and made her way to Luca's office. He was on the phone when she arrived, speaking rapid Italian, but he gestured for her to come in and sit. No, he was saying. I want everyone interviewed. Every girl who worked for Brennan. I want to know they're safe and have resources. Yes, all of it from the discretionary fund. And Marco? Find Brennan. I want to have a conversation about appropriate consequences. He hung up and turned his attention to Arya. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months, Arya admitted. Luca, about last night. The kiss. I shouldn't have. I'm glad you did, Luca interrupted. But we need to talk about what happens next. First, you're not going back to work at the Bellamy. The restaurant will be closed for 2 weeks while I clean house and install new management. When it reopens, you're welcome to return if you want. But I'm hoping you'll consider something else. I need to work, Arya said. I can't just live in your hotel suite. I'm not suggesting you do nothing, Luca said. I'm suggesting you work for me in a different capacity. I need someone to manage inventory across my properties. Someone detail-oriented, responsible, trustworthy. The pay is significantly better than waitressing, and the hours are more reasonable. Interested? It was a lifeline. A way out of late-night shifts and handsy customers and constant fear. But it also meant being in Luca's orbit permanently, being tied to him, being dependent on him. Why? Arya asked. Why would you do this for me? Because I can, Luca said simply. Because you deserve better than living in fear. Because I want you to stay in Vegas, and if a better job makes that more likely, then that's what I'll offer. He leaned back in his chair. I'm not going to pretend I'm a good man, Arya. I'm not. I do things that would horrify you. But I protect what's mine, and you're mine whether you fully accepted that yet or not. So take the job. Let me help you build something stable here. And Derek? Arya asked quietly. What happens when he finds me? If he finds you, I handle it, Luca said, and there was promise in his voice. Cold, certain promise. But I'd prefer to handle it before he gets that far. I'm having him watched. The moment he starts moving toward Vegas, I'll know, and I'll deal with him permanently. You're talking about killing him, Arya said. I'm talking about eliminating a threat, Luca corrected. Derek Johnson is a violent abuser who's obsessed with finding you. Men like that don't stop, Arya. They escalate. So yes, if he comes after you, I'll kill him. Does that bother you? It should. But when Arya tried to summon horror at the idea of Derek dying, all she felt was relief. No, she admitted. It doesn't. And that probably makes me a terrible person. It makes you human, Luca said, and a survivor. So what do you say? Take the job. Stay in the suite until we find you something more permanent. Let me protect you properly. Okay, Arya said. But I pay rent for the suite. I'm not a charity case. Deal, Luca agreed, though they both knew he'd probably set the rent at something nominal. Now, breakfast. I'm starving, and you need to eat. There's a restaurant on the top floor that does an excellent brunch. Over the next 2 weeks, Arya settled into her new life. The job was everything Luca had promised, challenging but manageable, with reasonable hours and excellent pay. She moved from the penthouse suite into a still luxurious but smaller unit on a lower floor, insisting on paying market rate even though Luca tried to argue. She learned the rhythm of his hotels, met his staff, slowly stopped jumping at shadows, and she fell in love with Luca Santoro. It happened gradually, in small moments. The way he remembered her coffee order without being asked, how he'd appear at her office at the end of her shift, offering to walk her home even though security made it unnecessary. The way he listened when she talked. Really listened, like her words mattered. How he never pushed for more than she was willing to give, never demanded explanations or justifications, just accepted her at face value. They had dinner together most nights, sometimes in restaurants, sometimes in his penthouse where he cooked surprisingly well. Italian dishes his mother had taught him, he explained, family recipes passed down through generations. He told her about growing up in Vegas, about taking over the family business young when his father died, about the weight of responsibility and legacy. He never explicitly said what the family business was, but Arya wasn't stupid. The armed guards, the way people deferred to him, the casual mentions of territory and respect. Luca Santoro was connected. Probably Mafia, definitely dangerous, and she was falling for him anyway. The kiss happened again on day 4, in his penthouse kitchen while he was cooking. She'd leaned in to taste the sauce he was stirring and he'd caught her, pulled her close, kissed her until her knees went weak. They'd stumbled to the bedroom, and Luca had made love to her with an intensity that left her shaking, possessive and demanding but attentive, learning every sound she made, every touch that made her gasp. Mia, he'd murmured against her skin. Mine. Say Mia, Arya. Solo Mia. You're mine. Only mine. It should have triggered her, should have reminded her of Derek's controlling possessiveness. But this was different. Luca's possessiveness came with protection, with respect, with the kind of devotion she'd never experienced before. When he said she was his, it felt like a promise rather than a threat. They fell into a routine. Work during the day, dinners together at night, sleeping in his bed more often than not. It was domestic and comfortable, and absolutely terrifying, because Arya knew it couldn't last. Derek was still out there, still looking, and sooner or later, her past was going to catch up with her present. On week 4, it did. Arya was leaving work late, later than usual because she'd been finishing inventory reports. Luca had texted that he was in a meeting but would pick her up in an hour. She'd decided to walk to the coffee shop on the corner rather than wait in her office. She never made it there. "Hello, Arya," a voice said from behind her. "Or should I call you by your real name, Sarah?" She spun around, and there he was, Derek Johnson, looking exactly like she remembered. Tall, blonde, handsome in that all-American way that had once made her heart race. Now, it just made her stomach drop. "How did you find me?" Arya asked, her hand already moving to her phone. "Don't," Derek said, and there was a gun in his hand, low by his side but unmistakably there. "Put the phone away. We're going to have a conversation, and if you cooperate, maybe I won't have to hurt you too badly." "I'm not going anywhere with you," Arya said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Leave, Derek. Leave Vegas. Leave me alone." "You're my wife," Derek said, moving closer. "You belong to me. You think you can just run away, change your hair, pretend to be someone else? You think I wouldn't find you? I'm a cop, Sarah. I have resources, and I've been tracking you for months. Now let's go. We're going to get in my car, drive back to Iowa, and you're going to remember your place." "Her place is with me," a new voice said. Luca appeared from the hotel entrance, flanked by Marco and Tony. He moved with that same casual confidence, but there was murder in his eyes. "Who the fuck are you?" Derek demanded. "I'm the man who's been waiting for you to make this mistake," Luca said pleasantly. "Arya, come here." Arya didn't hesitate. She crossed to Luca's side, and his arm immediately went around her waist, pulling her close. "You can't be serious," Derek said, staring at them. "You're with this guy? Some Vegas criminal? Jesus Christ, Sarah, have some self-respect." "My name is Arya," she said firmly, "and you don't get to talk to me about respect. You beat me. You terrorized me. You tried to kill me. We're done, Derek. We've been done for 6 months. Go home." "I'm not going anywhere without you," Derek said, raising the gun slightly. It was the wrong move. Marco and Tony had weapons drawn before Derek finished the gesture, and suddenly he was surrounded, outgunned, outmaneuvered. "Here's what's going to happen," Luca said, his voice conversational despite the lethal tension in the air. "You're going to put that gun down. Then you're going to get in the car my men are going to provide, and you're going to drive very far away from Las Vegas. Because if I see you again, if I even hear your name, if you make one more attempt to contact Arya, I'm going to kill you. Are we clear?" "You can't threaten a police officer," Derek said. "I'm not threatening," Luca said. "I'm promising. I've killed men for less than what you did to her. The only reason you're still breathing is because Arya asked me not to. But my patience has limits, Derek. Test them at your own risk." "This isn't over," Derek said, but he was backing toward his car, the fight draining out of him as he realized he was outmatched. "You hear me, Sarah? This isn't over." "Yes, it is," Luca said. "Marco, make sure Mr. Johnson understands we're serious. Nothing permanent, but enough to make the point." Derek fled, and Tony followed at a discreet distance. Marco approached Luca. "Want me to do more than scare him?" Marco asked quietly. "Not yet," Luca said. "But keep eyes on him. The moment he violates the warning, handle it." Arya waited until they were alone in the elevator heading to the penthouse before she broke down. Luca held her while she sobbed, months of fear and stress pouring out all at once. "He found me," she gasped. "He actually found me." "And he's gone now," Luca said firmly. "He won't be back, Arya. I promise you that." "You can't promise that," Arya said. "He's obsessed. He won't stop." "Then I'll kill him," Luca said simply. "I was trying to respect your wishes, trying to give him a chance to walk away. But if he comes back, if he makes one more move toward you, I'll end it. You're mine, Arya. Mine to protect. And no one, not Derek, not anyone, gets to hurt what's mine. They made love that night with desperate intensity, Arya needing to feel alive, to feel safe, to feel claimed by someone who actually cared about her. Luca was relentless and possessive, marking her, holding her, making her say his name over and over until it was the only word that mattered. "Ti amo," he said afterward, his voice rough with emotion. "I love you, Arya. I'm in love with you. I think I have been since that first night, but I know it now with absolute certainty. You're it for me." "I love you too," Arya whispered, the words feeling like both freedom and commitment. "I'm terrified of it, but I do. I love you, Luca." "Then trust me to keep you safe," Luca said. "Trust me to handle Derek. Trust me when I say I'll do whatever it takes to make sure you never have to run again." 2 days later, Marco reported that Derek Johnson had been found dead in his motel room, apparent suicide. A single gunshot wound to the head, his service weapon in his hand, and a note confessing to years of domestic abuse and expressing shame over his actions. The Cedar Falls Police Department conducted a brief investigation and closed the case. Arya knew it wasn't suicide, knew Luca had ordered it done. She should be horrified, should be disgusted. Instead, she felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she'd been carrying for 6 years. Derek was gone, permanently. She was finally, truly free. "Thank you," she told Luca that night. "Don't thank me for that," Luca said. "I did what needed to be done." He was never going to stop Arya. This was always how it was going to end. "I know," Arya said. "And that's why I'm thanking you. Because you understood what I couldn't say out loud, that I wanted him gone, that I needed him gone, that I would never be free as long as he was alive." "You're free now," Luca promised. "Free to build a life here. Free to be yourself. Free to love me without fear. That's all I want for you, Tesoro. Freedom and safety and happiness." 6 months after the night Richard Brennan had grabbed her arm, Arya woke up in Luca's penthouse to find him already awake, watching the sunrise through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Come here," he said, gesturing to the balcony. "I want to show you something." Arya wrapped herself in one of his shirts and joined him outside. The Vegas skyline was painted in oranges and pinks as the sun rose over the desert, the city lights fading as natural light took over. "You came to Vegas in the dark," Luca said, his arm around her waist. "Running, scared, alone. You changed everything about yourself trying to become someone new, someone strong, someone safe." He turned her to face him. "But the thing is, Arya, you were always strong. You survived 5 years of hell. You found the courage to run. You built a new life from nothing. You didn't need to become someone new. You just needed someone to see who you already were." "Luca," Arya said, her throat tight. "I see you," Luca continued. "I've seen you from the beginning. The woman who refuses help even when she needs it, who works too hard and never complains, who has shadows in her eyes but still smiles, who kissed me like she was drowning and I was air. I see all of you, Arya, and I love all of you." He dropped to one knee, and Arya's heart stopped. "The sun is rising," Luca said. "A new day, a fresh start. I want you to start it with me, not as my employee or my guest or my lover, though you're all of those things. I want you to start it as my wife. Marry me, Arya. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to run again. Making sure you always feel safe. Making sure you know every single day that you're loved, that you're cherished, that you're mine and I'm yours, and nothing will ever change that." The ring was beautiful, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, unconventional and perfect. Just like them. "Yes," Arya said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, of course, yes. I love you so much, Luca." He slid the ring on her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted like salt and sunrise and new beginnings. Below them, Vegas was waking up, the city that had become her sanctuary. the place where she'd run to hide and instead had found home. They were married 3 months later in a small chapel, just the two of them and a justice of the peace. Arya wore a simple white dress, her platinum blonde hair styled in soft waves, and Luca wore all black like he always did. They said their vows at sunset, promising forever, promising protection, promising love. "Say Mia," Luca said when the justice pronounced them married. "Forever now. No takebacks." "Forever," Arya agreed. "Though technically I was already yours. You've been calling me that since the night we met." "Because I knew," Luca said, kissing her. "The moment I saw you, I knew you were meant to be mine. I just had to wait for you to catch up." 1 year later, they stood in a different airport, preparing for their first international trip together. Luca had been patient, understanding that Arya needed time to feel comfortable leaving the country, to stop being afraid that if she left Vegas, she'd never make it back. But Derek was dead. Richard was gone. And Arya was finally ready to see more of the world. "We're going to Sicily," Luca had told her. "To the village where my grandparents were born. I want you to meet my family, the ones who stayed, who still live in the old ways. I want them to meet the woman who changed everything for me." They flew first class to Rome, then drove south to Sicily. The village was small and ancient, perched on a hillside overlooking the Mediterranean. Luca's relatives poured out of houses to greet them, all of them speaking rapid Italian and pulling Arya into hugs before she could even introduce herself. His grandmother, a tiny woman of 93, took Arya's face in her weathered hands and studied her intently. "This one," she said in heavily accented English. "She has survived much, yes? I see it in her eyes. But she is strong. She will be good for you, Luca. She will keep you human." "She already has, Nonna," Luca said, kissing his grandmother's cheek. "She's my heart. My everything." They spent 2 weeks in Sicily, eating meals that lasted for hours, drinking wine made from the family's own grapes, walking through olive groves and along coastal cliffs. Arya felt embraced by Luca's extended family in a way she'd never experienced, welcomed without question, accepted completely. On their last night, they sat on the terrace of the old family house, watching the sun set over the sea. Arya's hand rested on her stomach, on the secret she'd discovered just before they'd left Vegas. "I need to tell you something," Arya said. Luca turned to her, immediately attentive. "What is it? Are you okay?" "I'm pregnant," Arya said. "About 2 months. I wanted to wait to tell you until we were here, in the place where your family started, because this baby, our baby, is the beginning of our family." Luca's expression went through a dozen emotions in seconds. Shock, joy, wonder, and finally something that looked like reverence. He pulled her close, his hand joining hers on her stomach. "A baby," he said, his voice thick. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," Arya confirmed. "Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," Luca said. "Terrified, elated, overwhelmed, grateful. All of it." "Cristo, Arya, you've given me everything. A reason to wake up in the morning. A reason to build something better. And now a child. A legacy. A future." "I'm scared," Arya admitted. "What if I'm not a good mother? What if I repeat patterns from my childhood, from Derek?" "You won't," Luca said firmly. "You're nothing like Derek. You're strong and kind, and you've survived hell to be here. You're going to be an amazing mother, and I'm going to be here. Every step of the way. Making sure you and our child have everything you need. Making sure you both know every single day that you're loved and safe and cherished." They sat together as the sun dipped below the horizon, Luca's hand on her stomach, Arya's head on his shoulder. A year ago, she'd been running, terrified, alone. Now she had a husband who loved her, a family that accepted her, and a baby on the way. She had freedom and safety, and a future she'd never dared to dream of. "Thank you," Arya whispered, "for seeing me that first night, for not looking away, for being my monster when I needed one. Always, Luca promised. I'll always be your monster, Tesoro. Your protector. Your love. Whatever you need, I'll be it. For the rest of our lives. And as the stars came out over Sicily, Arya believed him. Believed in their future. Believed in the love they'd built from darkness and danger and desperate kisses. Believed that sometimes the scariest thing about falling is realizing you're not falling at all. You're flying. Have you ever had someone see you when you were trying to be invisible? Have you ever found safety in unexpected places? Where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of survival, protection, and unexpected love, subscribe to our channel for more dark romance tales. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. And if you want exclusive bonus content, extended scenes, and early access, click that join button to become a channel member. Your support helps us create more content like this. Thank you for being part of our community.